to do a bit of work on our bass. So we're going to work on our filters, maybe do a bit of EQ and compression. So this template that I'm using here is basing itself on an SSL console. So I'm trying to emulate the whole feel of running an SSL 4000 console here on E-Series. So that's why I've got the Slate Virtual Console. So that's adding some analog emulation of one. And then I've got the UAD SSL E channel strip here where I'm going to do some compression, filtering, and EQ. And I'm doing that on all of the tracks, whether that's instrumental tracks, effects tracks, buses. I'm always using a similar thing just to get that feel that I'm on an SSL console. So we're just going to start off here doing a bit of filtering on the bass, getting rid of any of the low end rumble, maybe take a little bit of top end off there. Just going to add a little bit of compression on here just to get it dialed in. Make sure I'm gain staging in my plugins. And just going to get a little bit of the boxiness out of the bass there. Check if there's any muddy sort of sounds. Find a nice sort of low end that I want to boost a little bit. You get a little bit of that finger noise out by boosting a bit on the top end. Just filter out a little bit of the top end so we don't get any sort of hiss or annoying noises that don't need to be in there. And with bass, I usually like to double compress, especially something like this sort of bass where it's very dynamic and live. So again, I'm going to use a UAD plugin. This time it's an 1176 plugin. Going to get a fair bit of compression out of it just to level it out a bit. So now what I've done is I've got a P bass, which is basically a parallel bass. And what I like to do with this is, so I've got a send there of P bass, so I'll send pre-fader, so I send basically the entire bass as is without any effects or anything on there. And I'll send that directly to the P bass track. And then that P bass track, I will have the Softube bass amp room on there just to give it a different sound. So I'll give it, depending on what the song is, I might have a crunchy sound, a bit of distortion or something like that I can blend in. But I might, as in this case here, filter out a lot of the low end, brighten it up, again, get rid of any boxiness, mud, bit of compression, really boost the top end on this, get it sounding a bit, it'll sound thin, but very toppy. And then what we do is we blend it in with our other bass track just to add a little bit of extra to it. It just brings it out in the mix a little bit more and just adds a little bit more character to the bass. So as I'm trying to blend it into the song to hear it, it's sounding a little bit thin. So I just go in and check. Sometimes when you use a plugin like this, you'll get a phase reversal on it, and sometimes you don't. And you want to check to make sure that it's not thinning out your bass too much. And so that's what that little light is for the Softube plugin there. It's just a phase invert, so I already had it on. So maybe it needs to be turned off, and we can tell by listening to it as we do it. Basically repeat the process on all the tracks, make sure that they're all filtered nicely, EQ's right, bit of compression on there, get them sitting nicely in the mix. We want to make sure that we're targeting the sweet spot of each instrument. Every instrument has its own sound, so we're not going to EQ these all the same. We need to target their specific frequency ranges here and make sure that they're projecting out of the mix and they've got their own place. They're not being hidden by any of the other tracks, and they're sitting nicely. So, a banjo, you're going to bring out a certain range. Guitar, you're going to do something else, and a mandolin, you're going to find the other spots. It's all about finding the spot that suits that instrument. generally find that acoustic guitar will always boost a little bit of the top end there. It's usually the instrument that I want to make the bright sound, especially in a song like this. Everything else is sort of sitting in the mid range. And even if you have electric guitars, they'll usually sit in the mid range. But an acoustic guitar can have a nice bit of brightness on the top end there. So we'll usually boost that depending on how it sounds. But that's the range I'll target for an acoustic guitar, is to get a lot of that top end out. But then saying that also, I like to sometimes get a bit of thick end, especially in a song like this where we are basing on very thin instruments here, not much massive low end. We're trying to get a bit of warmth and thickness in this song. So I'll even use a compressor like this LA2 that will sort of add a little bit of darkness to the track and a bit of warmth and thickness on the low end, and just do a little bit of compression. So I'm not really trying to compress too much. That's not the point of it. Really, the point of it more is to add that character to it. And it can make an acoustic guitar still have that top end, but also add a little bit of weight on the bottom of it. So again, I'm doing the same approach with the banjo, just to take a little bit of the harshness out, add a little bit of low end girth to it, just thicken it up a little bit. These are the main rhythm elements, and we just need to add a little bit extra to it. Now you might notice that I've got all these plugins sitting there and they're turned off and bypassed, and I keep going and reloading the plugins. Now, the reason I do that is not necessarily going to be relevant for everybody, but for some reason there's sort of like a little bug between Cubase and UAD that if you bring them up, then they've been saved in a template and they're turned off. Even if you turn them on and unbypass them, the plugins just won't work until I actually go in and reload that same plugin again from scratch. It's sort of it's a very annoying bug actually, because it means you can't have any settings set as well. If you like to have settings there, just make sure you go and copy the settings before you, or jot them down before you go and put the plugin back on, because it's going to go back to default settings as soon as you reinstantiate it. But unfortunately, that's the only way I've found to get these plugins to work back again. And it seems to be specific to UAD on the Cubase platform.